The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
You know, I should know better by now than reading too much into game one of a series. When I saw that Cleveland got clobbered in Boston in the opening game, and the Mavericks got clobbered in Oklahoma City, I said, they could probably be sweeps. No, they're not going to be sweeps because the road teams returned the favor last night. Both of them blowouts, and the series now have a totally different look. Luka Doncic, left on the side of the road, doesn't have a lift, can't hit his shots anymore. He wasn't vintage Doncic last night, but he did have 29 points, and he hit 5 of 8 from 3, and the Mavericks look far from dead. We got more intrigue tonight as the Knicks and Pacers series shifts to Indianapolis, and looks like we got some pretty good matchups here in this second round of the playoffs. We'll talk about that. We will also talk about the opening of minicamp for the Commanders today, and you know, it's one of the more interesting number stories in the history of the franchise, in that, you know, you had a player here for 10 years in Tress Way wearing number 5. In many ways, unfortunately, and this is no slight to Tress Way, who's a heck of a guy and a heck of a player, but because of all the churn and burn, he's kind of been the face of the franchise, right? I mean, all the different quarterbacks that have been here, all the different coaches over the last 10 years, and he's been constant. So, you know, number 5 had a place here, and Jayden Daniels comes in. He wore number 5 when he played at Arizona State, and when he won the Heisman last year, he wore number 5 at LSU. And what you want to do with a player you hope will be your franchise quarterback is to make him feel as comfortable as possible. So to say, hey, you better pick another number, pal, they didn't want to go that route. But Tress Way could have been a problem about this. He was just the opposite. In fact, I'm going to play this at 10 o'clock. When discussing his decision to give number 5 to Jayden Daniels, he got choked up about it. Yeah, that's how emotional he feels about the organization. Not sadness of giving up the number. It's that he wants this organization to succeed. He's been here for 10 years. He's played in 2 playoff games. They lost both of them. And they've had a mostly losing record in the time that he's been here. In fact, when's the last time that they had a winning record? Had to be Jay Gruden, 2018, maybe, and they didn't even make the playoffs that year. So, yeah, I mean, this is really something that shouldn't be something, but it is something. And so now Tress Way is giving number 5 to Jayden Daniels. Now, Adam Schefter is reporting. It's amazing it's reached Schefter's desk, but it's risen to the level of Schefter's desk. And he said, as part of the exchange, when Way is finished as a player, Jayden Daniels will send Way and his family to the Oklahoma LSU game. Tress Way, I think, has 3 kids, and he says he's going to adopt another one. So that's a family of at least 6 that would be headed to the Oklahoma LSU game. And I would think that Jayden Daniels, as a Heisman Trophy winner there, might be able to get him good seats. Now, John Keim taking the reporting to another level, he says there will be more to the deal, still finalizing the details. And Tress Way has not picked another number as of yet, but he has time to do that before they open up minicamp, which is sometime next month, probably the middle of next month, maybe late next month. So that will all be straightened out. I told this story earlier. There's actually two Washington football team number stories. The one with Clinton Portis, when he came here in a trade in 2004, wanted number 26, which is the number he wore in Denver. That was worn by Ifeanyi Olete, a defensive back, and Portis made a deal with him that he would pay him $40,000 for the number, and it was in 2 installments. He paid a $20,000 down payment, got number 26 when they opened up minicamp and into training camp, and Olete took another number, and then Olete was cut before the end of camp. And Portis said, well, you know, you're not here anymore. I don't have to pay you. It went to court, and Portis, in a settlement, gave him another $18,000. So he gave away $38,000 for a number that he could have had anyway. You know, he could have worn another number in training camp, and when they cut Olete, he could have gotten 26, but he decided that he was gonna make sure that he had 26. If you look at some old pictures, and there are some, you probably find them on the internet. When John Riggins came here in 1976, there was an odd year of like free agency, and George Allen, of course, took advantage of it. He signed Calvin Hill, and he signed a couple of other players, but one of them was John Riggins, who'd come over from the Jets, and Riggins had worn 44 in New York. And he came here, and Moses Denson was wearing number 44. Riggins said, fine. He wore number 29. I don't think said anything about it. Was prepared to wear 29, I guess, during the season. They cut Denson before the end of training camp. When the season opened, Riggins wore 44, and the rest is history. So those are number stories. Here's another number story, if you want it. In 2002, when Steve Spurrier came here, he wasn't paying any attention to the history. So he has got his two ex-Gator quarterbacks, Shane Matthews and Danny Werfel, and they come out for minicamp. Werfel's wearing number 7. Matthews is wearing number 9. And people go, whoa, 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 whoa. Those are Joe Theismann and Sonny Jurgensen. Those have been out of circulation since they stopped playing. And in the case of Sonny, it had been over 25 years since he played. 74 was his last year. And anyway, they prevailed upon them, and Matthews called Sonny, and Sonny said, look, I don't care if you wear it, but the fan base isn't going to like it, and that's going to be rougher on you. So Matthews switched to 6, Werfel switched to 17, and everybody moved on, as did the quarterbacks after 1 year, as did Spurrier after 2 years. All right, some NBA. And no, I did not stay up for this. I watched the Cavaliers blow out the Celtics, and really surprised about that because Cleveland got out to an early lead. Boston went ahead. They wound up tied at the half, and then as the second half got underway, Celtics pulled away by like 6, and I thought, okay, they're going to take it from here. But no. Cleveland outscored them big. They outscored them 36-24 in the third quarter and 28-16 in the fourth to win 118-94. And they got a big bench contribution in this game as Tim Hardaway Jr., I believe, spent some time here. Hardaway Jr. off the bench gave them 17 points in the victory, and afterwards talked to Scott Van Pelt.
17 points in 19 minutes. You need to play more, Tim. You look like you're ready to roll, huh?
Yeah, just grateful, to have the opportunity. My guys took care of business in the first round, so just taking advantage of every moment I can while I'm out there.
PJ just talked about how Luka and Kyrie absorb so much attention that it frees you guys up, right, to get clean looks. But you got to make them. You all shot it so well tonight, Tim.
Hold on. I jumped the gun here. I'm an idiot. I was just talking about the talking about the Cleveland victory over the Celtics, 118-94, and I jumped right to the Dallas victory over the Oklahoma City Thunder. So excuse me for that. Dallas, yes, did win, and they won big, 119 to 110, won by 9 points. And as I said in the open, the reports of the demise of Luka Doncic are premature. 41 minutes, he had 29 points and hit 5 of 8 from 3. Daniel Gafford, big pickup, at the deadline from Washington. Gafford playing 27 minutes. He gave them 13 points and 7 rebounds. And P.J. Washington, another pickup at the deadline. He was dead-eye on 3, 7 of 11, finished with 29 points, playing 40 minutes. And, yes, the contribution they got off the bench was Tim Hardaway, who played 19 minutes, scored 17 points, and then, yes, talked to Scott Van Pelt.
From 3, and yet here come the Thunder right in the third. They get the lead. What do you guys show yourselves in responding in that venue to let them get ahead and then ultimately end up winning the way you did?
Well, for the most part, everybody knows that played in the playoffs here. It's a loud building. Crowd really gets into it, so we try to do whatever we can to take them out of it. Those young guys feed off of that energy really, really, really well. So just try to do whatever we can to get stops, stay poised through it all, and make sure that when we had the shots to knock it down.
You know what's funny is the other night in one of the post games, Kyrie was talking about being the old head, right? I mean, he's only 32, but he's seen a lot. Are there lessons, are there moments where he's able to give you a thought, you or your team, a thought, a message, something that you guys seize upon that's particularly valuable, Tim?
Yes, for the most part, we know he's a champion. So right there, it speaks for itself. So made big shots in big-time games, big-time moments. So fortunately for me, his locker is right next to mine, home and away. So, I mean, I'm asking him everything, man. I'm, feeding into everything, being a sponge, just like the rest of these guys. And whatever he sees out there, we listen.
This is a really talented but very young team that you're playing against. For them to see a little bit of a knot on their eyebrow, so a little see blood for the first time, so to speak, right? For you to give them that first L, how does that change the way this series proceeds, in your opinion, Tim, as you guys head home?
I mean, for the most part, it doesn't change anything. They're the number one seed in the West for a reason. So we're going to take their best shot each and every step of the way, and we got to be ready to counter that.
That's Tim Hardaway with Scott Van Pelt. Good thing for me, Game 3 is tomorrow afternoon at 3:30. Looking forward to watching that entire game, which has become somewhat impossible in this series when they're not tipping off till like 10 o'clock. So 3:30 tip-off tomorrow as this series now has life with Dallas winning, and it's tied at 1, and big contributions off the bench from Hardaway last night. They also got Derek Lively, gave them 11 points off the bench. So they had some contributions which they needed against an Oklahoma City Thunder team, which looked unbeatable. They have number 1 seed in the West. They had swept their last series. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, runner-up for the MVP. He played well last night. He had 33 points. But they held Chet Holmgren to 11 and were able to pretty much shut down the bench for the Oklahoma City Thunder. So they move on to Game 3 tomorrow afternoon. More on this game and this series. Kendrick Perkins analyzing the Dallas victory last night with SVP.
Well, it was all about the leadership, Scott. When you think about Kyrie Irving, we haven't seen him this happy and this much of a leader since Moby Dick was a goldfish. And I'm serious about this, right? He had 11 dimes, but he was the ultimate floor general, right, for us getting guys involved. We talked about Tim Hardaway Jr. He had 17 points tonight. P.J. Washington, 29 points. And guess what? The way that Kyrie Irving was playing, it's contagious because all of a sudden you see Luka having that same trust. And when you're those two guys and you're able to make guys around you better and you're passing the ball with the right type of energy and the right type of life, they're gonna make shots. And so when you think about that duo, we know that Kyrie and Luka could go out there and get 30 apiece. We know that. But when they start to trust others like the way that they're doing, hey, man, they're going to be dangerous, and they are dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, we got this massive monitor here in our studios in D.C. 46 from Washington and Hardaway Jr. That's the story of this night. You get those kind of contributions from those guys, and you're able to get out of that building and give OKC their first loss. They're the one for a reason. They've earned the respect of the league, and they've demonstrated that they're a team that's going to be reckoned with for a long, long time, including this postseason. But, Perk, now they lose. Does that change anything in that locker room, in your opinion?
It does. I mean, because now all of a sudden they got to get that sense of urgency back. And I didn't see that same sense of urgency that I saw in Game 1, especially on the defensive end, when they were getting into the ball, when they were loading up boxes and elbows, when they were tied together on the string. We're talking about the second youngest team in the league in the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they lack energy for some reason. Look, this is the semifinals in the Western Conference. You're going against Luka and Kyrie. The energy has to be there. It's so many times that that Gafford and Lively had wide open lanes to the rim, and even if they didn't get the pass for the dunk or the layup, it was opening up for the three-point shooting of Tim Hardaway Jr. and P.J. Washington. OKC just got to get it back together, hit the film room, and come back out in Game 3 on the road with that energy and show their athleticism and their youth.
Again, Game 3 tomorrow afternoon in Dallas. That's Kendrick Perkins last night on Scott Van Pelt's show. One other NBA story. We'll get to the Knicks and the Pacers in just a few minutes as they play Game 3 of that tonight in Indianapolis. Remember Big Baby Davis played in the NBA for, 7 or 8 years, was with the Celtics when they won the championship in 2008. He had earned the nickname Big Baby for a variety of reasons, and he was bigger than he should have been, always overweight, but had enough skill to stay in the NBA. Well, now he has been sentenced by a federal judge to 40 months in prison plus 3 years supervised release for his role in a scheme to defraud the league's health care plan benefits. Like they were turning in phony claims. This is what Clinton Portis went to jail for, what he was involved with the NFL. This was with the NBA. And there were 22 people involved in this, 18 of them former players, including Terrence Williams, who got a hefty sentence in this. Davis has said he's innocent since the indictments in the case were handed down in October of 2021, and he was found guilty of multiple fraud charges and conspiring to make false statements, ordered to pay $80,000 in restitution. Now here's the ridiculous part of this is that Davis, who threw himself at the mercy of the court during the sentencing, he said, "When I lost basketball, I lost myself. I ask you, Your Honor, to help me get back to who I am." Then he gets the sentence of 40 months, and he's outside the courtroom, and he's telling reporters, "Hey, this is really going to be a good thing for me because I'm going to lose weight."
I'm going to be swole, though. I swear to God, I'm about to get in so much shape. Oh, God. That's the only way you can stop me from eating hamburgers is put me in jail. That's what God said. I'm gonna stop you eating hamburgers. I'm gonna put you in jail. You don't want to stop eating hamburgers and Cheetos? You're going to jail. So now, I'm become the Rock.
I can just see him writing a book, the Jail Weight Loss book. Remember Riddick Bowe, always battling weight in his career, boxer. They said that they had his picture up at every fast food takeout place in Prince George's County where he lived. He once joined the Marines in an effort to lose weight. He thought he could get himself in shape if he joined the Marines. He lasted about a week and then quit. Unfortunately for Big Baby Davis, he's not going to have the option to quit jail. He's going away for 40 months, and in those 40 months, he says he's going to be the Rock. Good luck with that. But coming up, the sports story that won't die on sports radio this week with the Austin Rivers suggesting that there are 30 players in the NBA who could move to the NFL with no problem. It's enraged some former players, including Chris Long, who's actually done a little bit of research on this and provides some facts on it as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
It's been more than 35 years since Michael Douglas as Gordon Gekko in Wall Street said, "Greed is good." And no league and no commissioner has ever embraced that more than Roger Goodell and the NFL. The latest reporting is, and we're going to find out the full schedule next week, at least that's the reported release of the schedule. It's supposed to be May 15th. We'll find out how all these games line up and who's playing on what dates. They're going to have 2 games on Christmas Day, even though it's a Wednesday. The league said, so what? We'll adjust the schedule. We're going to play 2 games on Wednesday. The latest is on those 2 Wednesday games, they're going to sell them to Netflix. So if you don't have Netflix and it's not the Commanders involved in one of the games, you're not going to see either one of them. So, it's going to sell for hundreds of millions of dollars, I'm sure. The interesting thing for me, though, is unlike, these other games that get sold on Thursday night to Amazon and Peacock for the playoffs, they have to televise those games over, I don't even know if it has to be free TV anymore. You got to be over at least cable in the 2 markets. So it means that you're going to have crews, I guess the same TV stuff, same video, pictures and video, but you're going to have announcers do it on one of the other networks, and maybe they split it up. Maybe, for the local broadcast, Fox gets one and CBS gets the other, or however they do it. But, man, there is just money gushing, and they got buckets of it, and they're trying to put it in as quickly as possible. So I count on it. I mean, it seems it's so widespread now in the reporting. First, Boomer Esiason put it out there on WFAN earlier this week, but I'm seeing all over Twitter all these insiders for the NFL say it's a done deal. So if you want to be watching football on Christmas Day, your best bet is to have Netflix. Now, I know a lot of people do, but what is it now, another $21 a month or something like that? It's just insane. All right, this has been a firestorm this week. It's fueled sports radio in what is kind of a dead period. There's not a whole lot going on other than the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs. But the football has calmed down a little bit after the draft. We got rookie mini camps opening up this week. So Austin Rivers, who completed his NBA career this past year, played 11 years, was a good NBA player, son of Doc Rivers, great NBA player himself and coach, won a championship with the Boston Celtics. So Austin Rivers, now an analyst with ESPN, was on the Pat McAfee show, and I don't know exactly how they swerved into this. I think it was maybe McAfee indicating that football players are tougher than basketball players or something like that. So Rivers goes, well, I think there's about 30 guys who could go right from the NBA into the NFL, and there wouldn't be hardly any players from the NFL who could go into the NBA. Well, the second part of that is probably true. First part, that's gotten a lot of ex-players not necessarily angry, but like, hey, whoa, wait a minute here. Ross Tucker talked about it the other day. He said, wait till you get hit in the mouth and see what that's like. Chris Long had a long, no pun intended, NFL career, son of Howie Long, the Hall of Famer, won Super Bowls with the Eagles and the New England Patriots, and he does his own podcast. He was on yesterday on the Rich Eisen show, reacting to this Austin Rivers statement about 30 guys from the NBA being able to walk right into the NFL.
I think there's a list of maybe 7 to 8 guys that I would put on my NFL watch list.
Who's that?
Well, I'm working on it right now.
Okay.
Anthony Edwards, number 1. I think he could play wide receiver and go for 1,000 yards next year. I just think he's kind of a rare field kind of athlete. He's like a special athlete. I'd say Russell Westbrook would be one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to make a decision on Josh Hart. I'm trying to make a decision on OG Anunoby. I'm trying to make. I'm scouting people like.
I love this.
Hold on, the guy named Precious on the Knicks.
Precious Achiuwa. Yeah.
I'm like looking at his tape, bro. Like I'm taking this serious, Austin Rivers, dude. I'm taking it. You gave me something to do. I was bored, and now I'm looking at combine numbers. I just think it's kind of naive to discount the feel of a game, right? And then we haven't even gotten to the collisions. You want me to be animated, I'll get animated about training camp because like Richard Jefferson responded to me yesterday, took me out of context a little bit, but that's my guy. And he was like, well, I forget what he said, but the most important part is what I said. And what I said was, it's really hard to just say because a guy's athletic enough, he could make the NFL. Making the NFL is not just making a team. It's the process that goes into making a team and then staying on a team. We're not talking about like you could make training camp. Sure. Like we've taken a look at like all types of athletes. NFL scouts are scouting basketball players in other sports every year. Right. There have been college basketball players who have come to play football. It just doesn't happen at a high enough click to think it's automatic is all I'm saying. And 30? That's a lot of guys, dude.
That is.
I challenge you to find 30 guys. I could find 5 to 7, I think, that I would feel like if you gave them a year. Russell Westbrook, I don't know if I mentioned him.
You did. Yep.
Yeah, Russell Westbrook. I don't know why I think Jaylen Brown's really explosive. Is he really explosive?
Yes, he is. Mm-hmm. That's not a bad one,
you
too.
You said P.J. Tucker, too, Chris, the other day, right?
I just like P.J. Tucker. I think P.J. Tucker's a badass, and I'd like to make him a D lineman.
What would Achiuwa play? What are you seeing out of him? Because I'd love to hear what the smack talk from a secondary would be if a guy named Precious goes over the middle. You know what I mean? Like that would be.
I don't think so. I think I'm more looking at him as like a blocking tight end or an edge player. The problem is like it's just a different kind of athleticism. It's like fast twitch. To the 10th degree, like our plays are 3-4 seconds long. They're running up and down the court. You know, there's some guys that have that burst that you see them and you're like, yo, I saw that guy attack the rim. I think he might be able to play safety, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think it's as easy as people think. And I also think this, like, football players get calloused over time. And I don't mean that literally, like we have calluses all over, but Adrian Peterson felt like he had been calloused over 20 years, like hitting him.
Well,
you know, like it is a different conditioning. And I didn't realize it when I played, but when I retired, looking back at it, I'm like, that is the most violent, unimaginable job. And I cannot believe I did it for a long time. I don't see how somebody would just walk off the court and then be able to do that.
It would last long doing it. And we've talked about players who have tried it, and it just doesn't work. And I related this to you, I think, yesterday. I talked about the George Mason Final Four team from 2006. They had a center, Jai Lewis, who was listed at 6'7", 275 pounds. He wasn't going to play in the NBA. And they looked at his body. He got a lot of attention playing in the Final Four. And they said, why don't you give football a try? So the Giants signed him. They brought him to minicamp. They didn't cut him. He just went through a couple of days and said, no, this is not for me. He went off to play in Europe for about 7 or 8 years. DJ Burns, the big center for NC State, he's listed at 6'9", 275. I bet he's 35 or 40 pounds heavier. He was right to say, no, I don't want to play football. I mean, they're looking at him. Oh, look at the footwork. Look at the size. He'd make a great left tackle. No, doesn't want to play left tackle. And how about this? You know what training camp is in the NFL? It's not as bad as it used to be, but it used to be 6, sometimes even 8 weeks, where you had players sleeping in dorm rooms where, like, 17 and 18-year-old girls slept in these tiny little beds. And, you had a bathroom down the hall. That's not going to fly for the NBA. That's not going to work the same way. So we'll see if this carries through to the weekend. But there are a lot of people sustaining this. Like, you're looking at, hey, wait a minute. What are you saying there? Austin Rivers, good player. And, I think has a good understanding of athletics as a whole. Probably overestimated the ability, and they are, I believe, the greatest athletes in the world. I think, Michael Jordan tried to play baseball for the first time since high school, and there are those, including Terry Francona, who was his manager and won a 2 World Series with the Red Sox, who said, if he'd have stuck with it, he'd have been in the major leagues. So there are great NBA players, but not 30 of them succeeding in the NFL. The Twitter world is an interesting world, and this news came out yesterday. Jimmy Johnson passed away. Not that Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson, and I remember seeing him play. He was a great cornerback with the San Francisco 49ers, spent all 16 years of his career. 16 years as a corner is amazing. Darrell Green, 20 years is beyond belief. But 16 is incredible. And Jimmy Johnson was the brother of Rayford Johnson, a great Olympian who won a gold medal in 1960 in the decathlon. Jimmy Johnson played both ways at UCLA, became a defensive back in the NFL, named to the all-decade team of the 1970s, and died at the age of 86. He had 47 interceptions during his career, 2 of them pick sixes, and he won the George Halas Award for courageous play in 1971. He was very active in social issues and things like that, and was a guy that was very, very, very well respected in the NFL. Dick Nolan, who was his coach and had been an assistant with the Cowboys, said he was better than Mel Renfro and Cornell Green, both of them all pros. Renfro made the Hall of Fame. And, just a guy who had a great NFL career. And because of the way the world moves on, he's forgotten. He played his last game in 1976, and we're here 48 years later. And unless you were a big 49ers fan or a big fan of the NFL, you probably, and older, you wouldn't remember him. So it starts to pass through Twitter, and the Jimmy Johnson we know now, the former Cowboys coach who's on TV, had to put this out in the last half hour or so. He said, Jimmy Johnson, HoF DB from 49ers, passed away at the age of 86. R.I.P. Jimmy Johnson, HoF from the Dallas Cowboys and Fox, still kicking. So, and I think Jimmy's about 80 right now. So kind of a strange thing. And then this, talk about strange. Trey Turner played shortstop here for the Nationals, now with the Phillies. He's on the injured list now. But a 70-year-old woman says she was swindled by someone pretending to be Trey Turner, and she turned over an estimated $50,000. She had been communicating with someone she assumed to be Trey Turner on social media. She eventually learned that she was speaking with an imposter, but not before she gave up the money. She was previously diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. If they catch this guy, they had to throw him away in jail for a long time. Picking on a 70-year-old woman with Parkinson's. She received a message from someone she believed was Turner on her Google chat. She initially had doubts that it was Turner, but she said he was relentless and he was convincing. He's repeating things that I knew Trey Turner did on the field. Well, I mean, you can look that up on the internet. He kept harping about it for three weeks, and finally I said, "What do you want?" The fake Turner claimed that he was having marital problems and needed to make sure his wife did not have access to some properties. He asked the woman to send him large amounts of money to various accounts. After sending a total of $50,000, the woman concluded she was a victim of an elaborate scam and decided to contact law enforcement. I was gullible. I believed him. I should have known better. I just overlooked it. There should be a GoFundMe page here for her. And, this is just so awful. It's just terrible. And unfortunately, the way that news gets communicated these days, like a game of telephone, it's going to go into the wind like, oh, yeah, Trey Turner swindled this woman out of $50,000. He had nothing to do with this. Someone impersonating Trey Turner. And whoever this slimeball is, I guess he thought that it would be more believable if he was Trey Turner than Bryce Harper, maybe. I don't know. But, as a woman who's a fan of the team, gets contact from someone who says he's Trey Turner, is a Phillies fan, so is open to talking to him. And then, her big mistake was when he started asking for money that she didn't go right to the police. That's the time to do it. But elderly people are scammed by this nonsense all the time. And it's just too bad that this happened. And Trey Turner is seemingly an upstanding guy. I mean, obviously he wouldn't be doing things to try and swindle old ladies out of $50,000. He makes that in a few games. He's one of the more highly paid players in the league. So this is just a terrible thing, and hopefully they're going to catch this guy, but. Who knows? Who knows if they will? Next hour, Tim Kurkjian talking about Babe Ruth. Interesting stuff on Shohei Ohtani and Jay Gruden, former coach here, with insight on how to develop a rookie quarterback, which he did successfully with Andy Dalton when he was the offensive coordinator in Cincinnati. We'll get to that and more. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630. What in the name of Willie, Mickey, and the Duke has happened to the center field position in baseball? Tom Verducci with some numbers on that. We'll get to that this hour. Jay Gruden weighing in from his new home in Jacksonville, Florida, talking about developing a quarterback with Scott Abraham of Channel 7. We'll play some of that conversation for you later this hour. And what about Shohei Ohtani staying as the DH? Yeah, $70 million a year to DH, maybe never pitching again. Tim Kurkjian looks at that coming up shortly. And we got the number thing all settled. Number 5 is going to be worn by Jayden Daniels when he trots out on the field this afternoon for rookie mini camp as that little bugaboo or that little kerfuffle, or it wasn't even that. It was just a media creation, something to talk about as we got ready for camp. Tress Way has worn number 5 since he came to Washington 10 years ago. He's been an all-pro. He's been a great player, a team captain. And here's Jayden Daniels, a mere rookie. Not just a mere rookie. He's the Heisman Trophy winner and the number 2 pick of the draft. He's worn number 5, both at Arizona State and at LSU, where he won the Heisman last year. And he never said anything like, I demand this. In fact, he did a podcast with Keyshawn Johnson earlier this week, and Keyshawn said, what number are you going to wear? He says, I don't know. He didn't say they better give me number 5. No, he didn't say that at all. So it was all worked out. And you wouldn't think that this would be an emotional issue, but Tress Way got emotional, not because he had to give up the number, but because of how he feels about this franchise. And this is a guy who's been on mostly losing teams, played in 2 playoff games. They've lost both of them. And has had to endure these miserable seasons for most of his career. But he felt like there's great excitement now. And as he discussed yesterday, he felt really good about the decision to hand over number 5 to Jayden Daniels.
I was 1 with Chicago. Yeah. I didn't like it. Yeah. I got there, they gave me 1, and I got picked up here on the waiver wire. And it was the first time I felt wanted. It was like, hey, like they picked me. Yeah. And I came in, 5 was sitting there, and I was like, yeah. I was like, I like that. So it just kind of, man, this is harder than I thought.
It's all good, man.
But I think about, I was talking to my wife, and I've been fortunate enough to have been voted team captain 4 times. Mm-hmm. And if I get voted captain again in my career, that C gets filled in. And I was like, man, it's going to be weird if I give up the number. The first time I get that C filled in, it's going to be a different number.
Yeah.
And my wife said, why do you have the C in the first place? What gives you the C? And just feel like there's just so much excitement around this organization, hands down the most I have ever seen. Mm-hmm. Just all of the excitement building and building and building, and I just feel like this is just a very small part that I could do. Got a rookie coming in, can't imagine what's going on in his head and his heart, and I'm there for him on 4th down if we have to give the ball away. But maybe this is an example I could show him. Hey, I'm here for you now too.
Yeah, he's going to be. Yeah, it's funny. Caleb Williams, when they drafted a punter with the Bears in day 3, I think 6th round, out of Iowa, he tweeted out, "Yeah, we're not going to be punting much. Just save that." So Tress Way giving up number 5, and I think he felt like that was his responsibility too as a captain. It's a selfless act. You're all about the team. That he could have made a stink about it. He didn't. And also, according to what Adam Schefter is reporting, the only thing he's asked for is after his career is over, that Jayden Daniels will pay to have he and his family attend an Oklahoma LSU game. I don't know how often they're going to play. Oklahoma moving to the SEC? I guess they are. Yeah. So okay, they're moving in as well. So I don't know whether they'll be in the same setup or not. But when they play, he wants his family sent. He's got 3 kids, a set of twins, and another child, and he's talking about adopting a 4th. So family of 6 sent there. What's that going to be? $10,000, something like that. A mere pittance for what they hope by that time will be a franchise quarterback armed with a second contract that'll put him in the neighborhood of whatever it is for starting quarterbacks, $50 million plus. So all's well that ends well for now. And Tress Way has given up number 5. He has not yet decided what number he's going to wear. But when minicamp starts today, Jayden Daniels will be wearing his very comfortable and familiar number 45. You know why I said 45? Because I'm just thinking, it's 5, but I'm thinking about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, you may remember this, when he sat out that year for baseball, it would have been, I guess, the 93-94 season, came back with 15, 20 games to go in 1995 after sitting out most of that second season because he was playing baseball. But when they had the lockout and replacement players, he said, forget it, I'm going back to the NBA. He wore 45, which was his baseball number. And he said he was not going to wear 23 again because that was the last number that his father saw him play basketball in. His father had been murdered before he had that first retirement for baseball. And he played in 45 for a while, felt like he wasn't comfortable wearing it, and switched to 23, paid the fine to do that. As a matter of fact, when he was playing in the Eastern Conference Finals against Orlando, he had the ball stolen away from him, and whoever it was that took it away from him said, I saw a 45 out there, not 23. So Jordan put on 23, got himself back in better shape for the following season, and won 3 more titles, and probably was better in the second three-peat than he was in the first three-peat. So that's enough number talk for now. That settles that, and that hopefully is in the rearview mirror. There won't be any more number talk for a while. A little baseball, and this kind of tells you where we are in the sports landscape, that things are a little bit barren. So yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show, they looked at Babe Ruth's numbers for whatever reason. Maybe they were just looking for a segment to fill time. And they go, oh, look at that. Babe Ruth had only one MVP. I mean, this is a guy who's regarded as, still by some, as the greatest baseball player who ever lived. He changed the game of baseball. How could there only be one MVP for Babe Ruth? So they contacted the greatest baseball historian we have. That's Tim Kurkjian. Nobody knows more about baseball history. Nobody celebrates it more than Tim. And listen to Tim as he talks to Dan Patrick about the fact that the Babe only has one MVP, but they also swerved into Shohei Ohtani, and I found that interesting as well. So this was Kurkjian yesterday with Patrick on the fact that the Babe, the Bambino, has only one MVP award.
Well, Dan, there wasn't an MVP, an official MVP, until 1931. There were unofficial kind of MVPs before then, but they didn't really count. He won it in 1923. But you were only allowed to win it one time back then. So when you look at the voting from 1927, Lou Gehrig won the unofficial MVP in 27. And I looked up the voting that year, and Ruth didn't get any votes, and he had 60 homers. So he was disqualified. Dan, this is the bottom line. If they had had the MVP when he played his entire career, he would have won at least 10 MVPs. 1920 through 1931, the only 2 years that he wouldn't have won the MVP in my mind were 1922 and 1925, and that was because he got hurt. Dan, you understand who we're talking about here. He was the best pitcher in the American League, and then he decided in 1920, I'm going to become a hitter, and he hit 54 home runs. He's the first guy ever to hit 30, 40, 50, and 60 homers in a season. And in that 20 season, we know he out-homered a bunch of teams, but he hit more homers than the next three guys in the American League combined. And from 1926 to 1932, he out-homered the Senators, the entire team, 343 to 327 for a 7-year period. That's who we're talking about here. So if we had had the same rules as we'd have today, Babe Ruth would have at least 10 MVPs.
I want you to help me at least remember this. I remember talking to you about Babe Ruth's size. That everybody thinks, well, he ate all these hot dogs and, ate a loaf of bread, and like he must have been this massive guy. I'm looking at the program. It's like he's 6'2", maybe 215. And you brought up a player, and I hope you remember, Rich Aurelia. You said Babe Ruth was the same size as the Giants infielder Rich Aurelia. Do you remember saying that?
Yes, something like that. Babe Ruth was 6'2", 220 in his prime. You know how many 6'2", 220 guys we have now? They're everywhere. They are everywhere. But he was enormous for his day, which is one reason why he dominated his era like nobody else. But Dan, it drives me crazy. I love John Goodman, but we had John Goodman play Babe Ruth, and he's a big fat guy who's drinking beer and eating hot dogs right before the at-bat. Babe Ruth was a really good right fielder. He was a great pitcher. Dan, he hit 136 triples. No active player has anything close to 136 triples. And the closest slugger we had to Babe Ruth there for a while, Mark McGwire, who I love, hit 6 triples in his career. Babe Ruth hit 136. And you'll appreciate this. He was a great basketball player. He had great hands. He had great feet. He had unbelievable power. And what I love so much about him, like I love ambidexterity. I love too many things, Dan. Babe Ruth threw left-handed, hit left-handed, and he wrote and he ate with his right hand, which meant both of those hands were working. Just another reason why he's the best player of all time and the most underrated, in a way, baseball player ever, because we don't really give him his due.
Shohei Ohtani, could you see a scenario where he doesn't return to pitching?
I do, but knowing how competitive he is, how prepared he is, how important this is to him and his legacy. He is absolutely absorbed by numbers, including his own. And that doesn't mean he doesn't care about winning. But yes, I think there's an outside chance he's not going to pitch again. I say outside, Dan. My guess is he and Yamamoto will be 1 and 2 in that rotation next year for the Dodgers. And wait till you see those two guys if they are right. But getting back to Babe Ruth for a minute, and this is I'm very much of the minority on this. If there was a designated hitter in 1920 in the American League, I really believe Babe Ruth would have hit 50 homers and won 20 games. That's how dominant he was in his time. But he didn't throw as hard as Ohtani did. He didn't run like Ohtani. He didn't hit the ball quite as hard as Ohtani, and he didn't throw 100 miles an hour. But Babe Ruth was unbelievable during his time.
Okay, but why did he stop pitching?
Well, because he got traded to the Yankees, and they said it'd be better if you just hit. So he just became, he has as many career shutouts, by the way, as Pedro Martinez, 17. Think about that for a second. Pedro, for a 5-year period, is the greatest pitcher I have ever seen. And Babe Ruth had as many career shutouts. Babe Ruth held the World Series record for consecutive scoreless innings until others came along and broke it. So they just said, all right, you're just going to be a one-way player. So he said, okay. And he hit 54 homers. And then everyone said, Dan, he'll never do that again. And the next year he had 59 homers.
That's Tim Kirchin answering the question why Babe Ruth only won one MVP. But the Ohtani information is interesting in that, he's having this tremendous year at the plate. He's not pitching this year because he had a second Tommy John surgery at the end of last season, but he's leading the league in hitting by a fairly large margin. He's hitting .355. Next in line is .346. He's number 2 in home runs with 11. And, he's a guy who's in the discussion for MVP again, even as a DH. He's got 54 hits on the year, more than Mookie Betts, who's the leadoff hitter for the Dodgers. So we'll see at that kind of price, $70 million a year. Do the Dodgers say, yeah, we paid for you to be a 2-position player. We paid for you to be a pitcher and a designated hitter. Or do they say, man, things are going so swimmingly here with you just being a hitter. We're going to stick with that. And we're not going to have you go back to pitching where you could have another arm injury. There are injuries that you have just as a pitcher, the fatigue of trying to get ready. I mean, I've had pitchers on from the Orioles who, and you know this about pitchers too, in the major leagues. In most cases, they were the best hitter on their high school team. So there was an opportunity as they were going through the baseball ranks that they were going to play a position as well. As they've come through, and with the designated hitter now universal, I think even in the minor leagues they don't bat in most cases. Can you imagine having to do both? No, it's too hard to pitch. There's too much that goes into it. Even with the pitch counts and even with starting pitchers rarely going past 6 innings, it's just too hard to do. But he's one of a kind. He's a unicorn. He's one of one. And maybe next year he'll say, no, I'm under contract. I want to pitch. I want to do both. I get bored just being the DH. I want to be a pitcher as well. Coming up, Jay Gruden on developing a rookie quarterback. And is there maybe a loophole in what Jayden Daniels has done, which may or may not fall under the umbrella of illegal gambling? We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Tony's coming up at 11. We got Commanders rookie camp underway in Ashburn, and the players are being informed about how things work in the NFL, the various protocols, including the gambling policy, which has been changed a little bit, but it's very ticklish because there is legalized gambling and players away from the facility can bet on sports other than the NFL if they do it away from the facility. If they bet on their phones while they're in Ashburn, they can get popped. And then you have Jayden Daniels, who is that's what everybody's going to be watching and focusing on over these 3 days of camp. He was on a podcast, and I played a lot of it yesterday, that he did with Keyshawn Johnson. And Keyshawn brought up that Malik Neighbors, who was Daniels' star receiver when they played at LSU, that they had a bet on who would win Rookie of the Year. Neighbors had said that on the Pivot podcast. And he said, whoever lose got to pay, I think it's $10,000. So Keyshawn asked him about it, and Daniels says, man, he wasn't supposed to tell nobody. It's supposed to be, we got a little something going on. And then Keyshawn pressed him, was it $10,000? And, he confirmed that. And and as Daniel said, I mean, he put it out there, so it's like I can't say he's lying. So they both have pretty much confirmed that there's a $10,000 bet as to who's going to win the Rookie of the Year in the NFL. Well, again, there's a gambling issue here. And this is what Nikki Jabala and Mark Maskey have in the Post today. The NFL revised its policy in 2023 to include more stringent penalties for some violations and reduce the penalties for others. The latest policy does not appear to have explicit language pertaining to private bets with friends and family. I mean, this is one of those that if neither one said anything about it, nobody would notice it. And if the league found out about it, there's nothing they can do. It's not that big a deal. But now that it's out there in the wind, what do they do? How does the NFL tighten up this loophole? Do they say, I mean, can they say? Because this is just, a private little thing. It's like, a buddy and I betting $10 on something. And for them, $10,000 when they're going to be making millions, even as rookies, what does it mean? What does $10,000 mean? They could easily drop that at a blackjack table in a couple of hours in Las Vegas. It's not that big of a thing, but because it is football related, because it is two players that are betting on a football circumstance, which is Rookie of the Year, how does the league address that? I don't think there's going to be any punishment for either one of them right now. There may be just, hey, we can't have you guys yapping about that. If you want to do that privately, just make sure that it's kept there, because it's not like they're going to one of these betting sites, DraftKings or whatever, and doing that. It's between themselves, and it may be kind of a handshake type of bet, and the loser may pay off with a dinner or something like that. But as everybody walks on eggshells around this gambling, and we've had star players being suspended for a year. Now there's, I forget the guy's name, but there's a guy who's probably going to be kicked out of the league for just egregious gambling, just gambling all over the place. Anyway, as for the development of Jayden Daniels and how that's going to go, my buddy Scott Abraham talked to Jay Gruden, who's now saying he's not coaching anymore. He doesn't expect to get any opportunities. He's 57 years old, lives in Florida, likes to play golf, but is interested in doing media, does some various stuff, and discussed the development of a rookie quarterback and how a coach is able to do it.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. First and foremost, you got to make sure they get acclimated off the field, make sure they get where they're staying. You help them out, you get their contract signed, get all the stuff off the field out of the way first so they're comfortable. And then once you get in the building, there's always going to be somebody there to work with the rookies. And then obviously you got to get them introduced to the strength coach, which is very important, position coach, and then the coordinator and head coach, obviously. And you just start implementing your system. You build blocks every single day, put a block on top of each other, and you start slow and make sure you find out what type of guy they are, how they're handling the information. And then you go out and execute and see how they do.
Coaches, coaching staff can only do so much. How much did you rely on the veterans in the locker room or other players in the locker room to help these rookies along?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's what starts with your core culture. Everybody likes to use the word culture. You want to have good veteran leadership, and that's important because when rookies come in, they see a veteran guy who's making a lot of money, who has had a lot of success. They see him working hard, then naturally they're going to want to work hard, right? So it's very important to have those type of leaderships on your football team. And if you don't, you better find them. Otherwise, your team's going to be in disarray a little bit. But yeah, it's very important to have those guys, and those guys will rely on those guys for information, work ethic, weight room, off the field studying, preparation, all that stuff is critical for these young players. They have to have a standard, and that standard better be set high.
I watched some of your segments leading up to the draft with Colt McCoy. You guys are evaluating some of the quarterbacks in the draft. Curious your thoughts on Jayden Daniels versus that Drake May debate, because Washington had that number 2 overall pick. Would you have been inclined to pick Jayden over Drake from what you saw?
I would have, yes. I think Jayden, I just like the fact that Jayden played 5 years, 3 years at Arizona State, 2 years at LSU, and I just think he got progressively better. At Arizona State, I wasn't a huge fan, but as he just continued to play more and more, he got more comfortable in the pocket. He's more of a quarterback, drop back, passing quarterback, and obviously his skill set outside the pocket, running the football is unmatched by any quarterback in the draft. So, I think you just continue to work with his fundamentals. He's got accuracy. He's got deep arm strength. He's got anticipation. Obviously, he's got the athletic ability. So, yes, I would have taken Jayden. Now, Drake has some ability, but I just think it's going to take Drake more time. I think Washington's not in a position to play a guy in 3-4 years. I think Drake might take a couple years. I think Jayden's more ready right now for Washington.
So when you were with Washington, you guys drafted the late Dwayne Haskins. So that was a rookie quarterback coming in. What did you do with Dwayne to kind of get him settled, get him into the system? And how would you kind of do that with Jayden if you were the coach now?
Big difference. Jayden, I think the most important thing for Jayden right now is for him to get every single rep, first team rep. When we got Dwayne, we had Colt McCoy coming off an injury, and obviously we had Case Keenum. So we had kind of a 3-way competition. That's not fair for anybody, and that's my biggest regret. I wish I would have named a starting quarterback, let him get all the reps, because you got to have reps. Reps is king for a quarterback, and whether they're their first-year guy, whether they're a 10-year guy, you got to give them reps with the people around them, and a 3-way competition isn't good. So with Jayden, I think as soon as he walks in the building, I think he gets every first-team rep, and he'll grow with the team, and the team will grow with him.
We asked Dan Quinn a couple of weeks ago, is Jayden gonna be the week 1 starter? He didn't commit to that, saying when he's ready, he'll play. But when you draft a quarterback at number 2, and I don't know what your mindset was with the late Dwayne Haskins, do you expect Jayden Daniels to be that starter in week 1?
I do. Jayden played a lot more football. Jayden played 5 years of college football. Dwayne only really played 1, and Dwayne needed some time to develop. And we were hopeful that he could come in, pick up the system, maybe eventually be the starter. But he was more of a 2 or 3 years down the line type guy, not year 1. He wasn't quite ready. But Jayden's going to have to be ready. He's played a lot of football. He played in a pro-style offense at LSU. Coach Nussmeier, the offensive coordinator, did a good job with him. So he understands run concepts, pass concepts. I think he understands protections pretty well. So, yes, I would name him right now if I were Dan Quinn and make sure he gets all the reps. When I was at Cincinnati, we didn't have a quarterback. We drafted Andy Dalton in the 2nd round. And as soon as he walked in the building, Coach Lewis and we both agreed that he would be the starter, and we gave him every single rep in training camp. And it helped him a lot because got him ready. You got to get him ready, and reps are what'll get him ready.
You've watched some tape on Jayden. You've watched probably some games live on television watching Jayden. How do you think his game's going to translate into the NFL, and what does he have to work on from now until that week 1?
Well, I think they're going to have to be balanced first and foremost. They're going to have to run the ball. And obviously with Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson Jr., that'll help a lot. That'll open up the play action games, which will be easy for Jayden. He's very natural in the play action game. He's mostly a shotgun guy, but I think under center, he'll still be effective. Get him outside the pocket, which will make him more comfortable. Obviously, try to stay out of 3rd and long and make it known passing situations. That's tough on any quarterback, but especially rookies. But I think he'll be fine. I think he needs to work on protecting himself a little bit more. He took some major shots against Florida State and some other teams that he has to avoid those because he has to stay healthy. Availability is number 1. You see every year there's 12 to 14 teams that are playing 2 and 3 quarterbacks. And with Jayden, his style of play, he's going to put himself in harm's way a few times. He's just got to learn how to protect himself because he's no good to anybody when he's on the sideline with a hurt shoulder, hurt back, or whatever it might be. So he's got to work on protecting himself and obviously just continue to grow in the offense, whatever Cliff Kingsbury wants him to do. And Cliff has to, understand what he's good at, and they have to work together and find out a good common ground where they can go attack defenses in a great way.
If you had the keys to the offense, how would you kind of utilize Jayden, and what type of an offense would you build for Jayden?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's so versatile in what he can do. You know, that's the good thing about Jayden is there's a lot of things. I mean, there's in the running game, I think the running game especially is where they're going to thrive because you always have to take a defender and make sure you account for the quarterback. That's not always the case, and that's going to open up things for Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. And also, if they do collapse, then Jayden Daniels is the type of guy that most guys on zone reads will get 6 or 7 yards. Jayden's the guy that can get 70. You know, so the running game will be critical for them. And unique ways to run the ball. RPOs obviously are easy for Jayden Daniels. He can read a linebacker. If he closes, they throw it in a window that they can replace him. Bootlegs are easy for Jayden. He can get outside the pocket, and then he can run, and he can obviously throw the ball down the field. But I just think that there's so many different ways you can attack. But you got to be kind of simple because he is a rookie. You got to make sure that he understands what he's supposed to do and where he's supposed to go and make sure he's protected because defenses aren't just going to let him, run outside the pocket. They're going to have people outside. They're going to have edge guys protecting the outside. So he's going to have to make sure that he hands the ball off when he's supposed to and throws it away when he has to throw it away.
This fan base is clearly excited about Jayden and the possibility of he being finally the answer maybe at the quarterback position. But there's also some hesitancy with the fan base, seeing that comparison to a Robert Griffin III. Obviously, Robert got hurt, not all his fault. Do you see similar skill sets with Jayden and Robert? Some say Jayden is a much better passer coming out.
100%. And Robert came from Baylor, and their pass offense was pretty simple. They were more of a one-read type guy. And if he wasn't there, Robert would take off and run. LSU did some good things pass conceptually wise. And like I said, Doug Nussmeier did a good job as offensive coordinator, 3-level throws, they high-load hook defenders and did a lot of good things that pro-style offenses do. And I really like the way Jayden became more of he could work progressions. He could get off his first progression to his second progression. At Arizona State, he was more of that guy's covered, I'm gone. He's developed into more of a pocket passer. And obviously with the ability to run, you're going to see limited coverages, which is good. You're not going to see a 2-man in any of these match coverages where you don't have somebody spying on the quarterback with Jayden Daniels because he'll kill you. So I think defenses will be pretty simple for him. And then he just got to make sure that he understands pass concepts and gets them to the right people and move the chains.
Obviously, you put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in this franchise, and this franchise is still important to you in a sense. To see where it's at right now, new owner, new front office, new head coach, new quarterback, fan base is excited. What is that like for you to kind of see maybe finally this is heading in a good direction?
Yeah, for sure. It's nice. I know Dan Quinn's a good guy and a good football coach, and they just got to make the right decisions. Hopefully they made the right decision on offensive coordinator. Hopefully they made the right decision at quarterback. Defensively, they had a lot of holes. They lost a couple of good pass rushers and Chase Young and Montez Sweat. They got to replace those guys. They got the kid from Dallas, but I think defensively they're still going to struggle a little bit. And offensively, they had to address the offensive line, which they did. They got the center from Dallas, which is good, and drafted a tackle, so that's going to help them out a little bit. They got a tight end. They got Zach Ertz, and I think they drafted one, in a second or third round, so that'll help them out. So, but it's still going to be based on, how they handle the quarterback position, and that's going to be the key for a lot of these teams going into the regular season. There's going to be 4 or 5 starting rookie quarterbacks, some other quarterbacks with some questions. How Jayden plays, how Cliff Kingsbury handles Jayden Daniels will be the key for Washington's success moving forward.
And the mental makeup of Jayden is probably important too, because you're probably going to have some struggles as a rookie quarterback. How he handles that will probably go a long way toward what type of quarterback he's going to be 2 or 3 years down the road.
Yeah, and that's a big concern with a lot of guys coming out now because of the portal and guys are getting paid in college football. You don't like it at Arizona State, I'll just quit and go to LSU. You can't just quit now. You have to stick with the plan, and you're stuck here at Washington, and you got to get better. And you got to handle adversity, and there will be a lot of it. Dallas is a good football team. Philly's a good football team. The New York Giants got a lot better with the receiver from LSU. They're going to be a good football team. So there's going to be a lot of competitive football teams. You're not going to win every game. How you handle adversity, how you handle getting a sack, how you handle getting shut out in a quarter is going to be critical in his success. But I think Jayden's a pretty tough-minded guy. You can see he's a great competitor, and I think he'll be fine.
So that's Jay Gruden with Scott Abraham analyzing what Washington is facing in developing Jayden Daniels. Big takeaway is got to give him all the snaps. I think the best thing for him is if he doesn't play a lot in the first year. They have Marcus Mariota, who's been a starter in this league, was at one time the number 2 pick of the draft, just like Daniels, and rather than force feed him in there, take it along slowly. But what you're hearing is, hey, this is a guy who's not like Dwayne Haskins. He didn't just play 1 year of college football, which is what Haskins did. I mean, he redshirted and sat on the bench for a year before he got a year to start and then came out for the NFL draft. This is a guy who's been a starter for 5 years, and he's 23, I guess, going on 24. So, this is a guy he thinks should be playing rather early. And, I think that the coaching staff is saying the right things now. Like, we not saying we fully expect him to be the starter in week 1. He'll play when he's ready to play. And so that would be something that he said. And also a lot of these RG3 comparisons about, how he's about the same size. He's a little taller, but he's also very thin, a big running quarterback in college. Can he run that much in the pros? What he's telling you there is he's coming from a different offense than RG3 came from at Baylor. They didn't have a playbook. The Shanahans knew that. They knew that it was going to take a while for him to adapt to a pro system, that they were going to run something that was very similar to what he ran in college. What you're hearing here is that the system that he ran at LSU is more similar to what they run in pro football, and that should help him with the adjustment as well. But we're a long way from seeing what's going to happen. It's just rookie minicamp starting today. I don't know if we'll find out much, but I'm sure that whoever is reporting on this will say, oh, look at that arm. Look at the way he runs. But, yeah, let's see what happens when the live bullets start to fly. All right, that's enough for me. Tony is coming up next, and I will see you back here Monday morning at 9 a.m.